Hello, my name is Ray Kerlick. I'm a partner at the law firm of Wadler, Perches, Hundl, and Kerlick in Wharton, Texas. Today I was hoping to talk with you a little bit about oil and gas production in Texas, and specifically the surface damages and the use of your surface as a landowner in Texas. In Texas, oil and gas and surface are two different interests, potentially. Most of us are familiar with this idea that two different people may own the surface and then own the minerals or the oil and gas. Right now I'm going to focus on the issue of someone who owns both the surface and the minerals. When dealing with an oil and gas company, the way to keep your rights is to put them in writing. There is a legal document called an oil and gas lease, and it specifies exactly what can and can't be done, for the most part, when dealing with oil and gas production. This is a legal document, and we would always recommend that you consult with an attorney of your choosing to discuss the terms and negotiate the terms that will be applicable. Let's talk a little bit about surface use. The first thing to keep in mind is, in Texas, oil and gas production is favored. That means that the oil and gas company will always have the right to enter onto the surface to produce oil and gas. The general rule is that the oil and gas company can put a well or a tank or a pipeline anywhere on your leased property that they need to best produce the ground, the oil and gas. Now, there are certain exceptions in terms of spacing next to your house. There are field rules and general rules that deal with how close a well can be to your house, but typically these are going to be unsatisfactory because oftentimes they're 250 feet or 500 feet at the max. So most people want a little bit more space between them and an oil well than that. The best way to handle this is through putting some provisions into your oil and gas lease that deal with how the oil and gas company has access to your property, how they leave your property, and where they can put equipment, pipelines, and tanks on your property. So again, some common provisions have to do with access. In most situations, the oil and gas company will want their own gate to your property. Typically that's built at their expense, and the issue becomes who has access through this gate. You can specify who has access to this gate in a lease. You can also specify what type of gate is built, whether it's cattle proof, what kind of lock it has on it, who has the keys to that lock, what type of access during times of day can be had through that gate. Now, all these provisions are things that are negotiated, and you won't always get exactly what you want, but at least you'll know some of the ideas that we're dealing with. A similar thing has to do with fencing and cross-fencing your property. Typically, the oil and gas company will fence off the area around the well. That's for your protection as well as theirs. But having to do with cross-fencing of your property, there's also provisions that deal with how they keep up those fences, how often they have to check them, how tight they need to be. These can all be specified in the lease itself. Other issues have to do with roadways. Typically the roadways will be, a new roadway will be built out to the well. It will be maintained by the oil and gas company, and typically anything that the oil and gas company builds will be left and become your property after they leave. But again, these are all things that have to be negotiated within the terms of the lease. Finally, issues dealing with hunting. This is typically something that most of the landowners are interested to make sure is that the oil and gas company is not entitled to access to property for any reason other than producing the oil and gas well. They're not entitled to hunt, to farm, to fish, to otherwise use your property, except for the limited purposes of getting out to the well and actually producing the oil and gas. Same is true of the water on your property. The water is your water. It typically goes with the surface, and therefore they are not entitled to use that water unless they reach an agreement with you. So again, when negotiating an oil and gas lease, keep in mind that as the surface owner and the mineral owner, you have a lot of rights that you are entitled to enforce. In any event, we look forward to talking with anyone who may have questions about these items, and we appreciate your time. Thanks.